Hello everybody, thank you for watching this. Hopefully this clears up a lot of issues we're having in regards to the structure of the reading class. And then if you watch this, we can have a very brief meeting when we come back, and everything should be kosher. Alright, so we're going to start right here with the whole point of the reading class is to enhance reading skills. The book is actually irrelevant. The book really has no purpose except to give them something to read, so we can make sure they're reading. The goal is to teach reading comprehension and reading skills. So the book is essentially your tool to do this, okay? So the tests aren't going to be on the book. It just reading skills. That is our focus. So first of all, strategic reading means we got to teach them how to read with purpose, which means that we need them to be able to understand on their own when they can skim something. If they need the date or they need a character name, they can skim and find that. Whereas the times we need them to actually go deeper and read more carefully. They need to know how to do this on their own, because that's going to help them all the way through high school and university and life in general. All right. Also, reading selectively. This especially matters in regards to skimming. Because if they need to, say, find out when Christopher Columbus arrived on the shores of North America in a textbook, they can look for a chapter heading or a paragraph heading that says Columbus discovers North America, however you want to phrase that, and they know to read that chapter. They also need to know to look at the first sentence, because that is most times the topic sentence. You can understand where everything else is coming from. Now, once again, this is not about narrative texts or stories. This is more primarily about textbooks, because our reading skill is not just about them reading a novel. It's about teaching them how to read their textbooks, okay? In addition to this, the Macmillan readers, while I'm not a fan, are very good for teaching this, because every chapter has a specifically geared heading, chapter title, that can help you teach this. So it's very relevant. And then, of course, skimming for overall impressions. We got to teach them how to just kind of skim and say, I feel like this chapter is going to talk about how Father Thomas was pivotal in Ram Muhammad Thomas. Father Thomas, that wasn't his name, was pivotal in how Ram Muhammad Thomas, I totally blanked on the priest's name, so I'm not going to know it for the rest of this training. Just know that. How he was relevant in Ram Muhammad Thomas answering the question in this chapter correctly. Okay. All right. So getting below the surface, going beyond what is just there in the words. So, for example, last year we read Frankenstein and Dracula, and when we look at these two books, they on the surface don't look like they have any value. But when you look at both of these, they have morally intrinsic values that we could discuss with our students. Right. Right. Also evaluating critically. Is this a relevant story? Is it not relevant? Why does it matter? What is the purpose of this character taking these steps? Drawing conclusions about why things did or didn't happen, right? So, Ram Muhammad Thomas, why was he arrested? Should he have been arrested? Did he cheat? What do you think? You know, why wasn't he chased when he and Salim disappeared? After a man fell mysteriously from the top of the stairs. Now, we all know the guy was a drunkard, and most people probably assumed he was drunk when he fell, so, you know, there you go. But you can have them discuss this, because later in the book you find out the guy actually didn't die, so why would they go after these two kids anyway, you know? And it just kind of seemed like where they lived in the caste system and the fact that they lived in these places they lived, that it probably was irrelevant that the man fell, but it's, you know, neither here nor there. But those are things you can discuss, all right? Connecting new information to previous knowledge and experiences. So a lot of people, when they started reading Slumdog Millionaire, they had their students work on understanding what the caste system in India looked like. And this allowed for the students to have previous knowledge to connect as they read the story. These are the kind of things you want to do. Your job as a teacher is to read ahead. You cannot read the book with your kid, okay? You have to read the book ahead. And then you have to be able to pull things out that you feel like are relevant. And you're not going to know it all. We don't know it all. None of us are perfect. But you want to pull stuff out, and then you want to guide the students to ask certain questions, and then they may discover things you didn't even think about, and it just makes the learning all the more richer. Okay? But you have to have looked at the chapter first, and you have to know what questions to ask, because you're not just going to magically come up with questions as you're in the classroom. Okay? The thing is here as well is we're going to be using our vocabulary. This is more like a language act side of it, but in reading it is very important. We have to make sure they're using the new words correctly, that they're expanding their vocabulary, and they're mastering the vocabulary, which means that once you introduce a new word to them, you cannot just introduce it and walk away. For instance, with Slumdog Millionaire, when you introduce the word caste system words, you want to constantly use that whenever you're addressing certain things that seem like they're out of place. Okay? For example, when the gangster guys are actually physically maiming children in order to use them to beg in trains and on the streets, why are they able to get away with this? Not only that, they're going into orphanages and purchasing children in order to take them in, train them how to sing, and then physically maim them. How is this possible? Do you think the caste system in India has something to do with it? If this happened here in China, how long do you think it would take before people noticed and said something? Do you think anybody would say something? If you started to notice a rise of children, blind and lame and missing limbs, suddenly begging in the streets in a certain area of town, wouldn't that raise some red flags? Well, why doesn't it raise red flags in India? Do you think the caste system has something to do with that? How so? How does the caste system have something? You have to keep using the terminology, and I know we all know this. And as we're developing our vocabulary program, these are things we need to consider, because we really do need to be able to implement the vocabulary from the other classes, such as math, science, art, history, and all these other classes, because we need to make it so these students can actually study with their textbooks easier. Which brings us to speed. All right? The point of building vocabulary is for them to be able to do faster reading for their homework. They should be able to do their homework in a reasonable amount of time, and they can do that if words that are taught to them in all these different classes are actually mastered, so that they understand the word and they're not struggling or survival reading, which means skipping it and then losing the point because the word is too difficult. This is what the focus of the vocabulary needs to be. We need to find the words that are relevant, and we need them to be able to learn them to the point that they are not slowed down and not struggling with them. These are the skills we're teaching in our reading class. For continued reading, we want them to want to read more from that same author. Like J.K. Rowling. You read her first book, you want to read more of her books. This is a book I'm reading. Michael Grant. Apparently one class or one grade or one something in KCIS is reading the first book of the series. Is how I found it. And I really liked it. So I purchased the entire series, and I am now reading the second book. These are the things we want with continued reading. We also want them to enjoy reading for pleasure and not in Chinese. We want them to understand the value of reading in a language that is not their own, because so many things are lost in translation. We don't want things lost in translation for these kids. So reading and writing are interlinked, and we all know this. So through reading, they should be able to see things like how strong sentences are able to be linked together to create organized paragraphs. They should also understand, which happens more with us reading expository texts, but understand how to write clear, coherent, and focused essays, including the introduction, the supporting, and the concluding paragraphs. All of this has to happen by them reading and seeing it lived out in examples. And you can use things from the book. You can point out that, this is a short sentence. It only has 5 words, but it's a very powerful sentence. This is a very long sentence. It may be considered a run-on sentence, but it works in this context. And why does it work in this context? It works in this context because all of this information needs to be put on you as quickly as possible, and to have any kind of punctuation would stop the inundation of the, is inundation a word? of the point. It would ruin the point, is the point. Ha. Okay, and then, you can point things out like that. You can point out, like, punctuation. Why do you think they used an exclamation point here? Why did they not use a question mark for this sentence? Did you notice that in novels that a lot of sentences that should end in a full stop actually end in a comma? These are things. Do you notice that they indent all of these kind of things. Why is this sentence by itself? Why is this not part of the paragraph above it or below it? Do you think it's that important that it should be left out by itself? All of this kind of thing. Now, this is kind of lost with Macmillan, because Macmillan readers are simplified versions, and so you're not getting the original text, but you can still use it to point out certain aspects. All right, so for lower phase, we want these students to be able to go from a simple text to a complex text by the end of the academic year, not by the end of this semester, okay? But we really want to be able, and I'm not talking about it has to be this huge advanced, just 1 or 2 steps above what they can currently understand. If we have done that, we are teaching them reading skills, and that is the goal, all right? So our goal is to teach reading skills so that the students move from the simple text they're doing now to a more complex text. And what does that mean? All right, so with the simple text, we need to consider, like, the Macmillan Reader is a simple text. No matter what level we go up to, it's a simple text, all right? Whereas an actual chapter book, like Boy in the Striped Pajamas, Holes, those are complex, okay? So you look at a simple text is going to have a single level of meaning, whereas complex text will have multiple levels of meaning, like satire and metaphor. A lot of Shakespearean story, well, all Shakespeare, really utilizes a lot of the, obviously, complex text, which is why even advanced readers struggle reading Shakespeare, all right? So simple text, they're going to have a simple linear structure. It's just going to be a narrative. It's just going to be a story. Whereas a complex text will have sophisticated structure, meaning they can use flashbacks. You could be in Paris in 1951, and then the next chapter, you're in New York in 2008. You have to be able to keep it all together. And then, of course, foreshadowing and like using predictive words to kind of tell you something bad is coming, something's on its way, or something good is going to happen, however it works out. Simple texts have the clear and literal language. It's there. Macmillan readers, it's just there. Whereas complex texts, once again leaning toward Shakespeare, we see the figurative, the ironic, and the ambiguous language that is used there, which requires readers to go deeper into the text, okay? And then simple text will use contemporary language. It uses a simplified modern language for them to understand. Whereas, once again, looking at Shakespeare, or even looking at Jane Austen, as we read Pride and Prejudice later this year, we have the archaic or unfamiliar languages of even 100 years ago can be really archaic to us, especially if it's something we've never heard before. Of course, we're looking at the single perspective in simple text as opposed to complex or multiple perspectives in the regular text or in the complex text. I got thrown off because I realized I skipped themes, but I'll go back to that. So this isn't just about like if it's written in first person, third person, or it swaps around from one person's point of view or another. It also means that some of these texts make you think, where you had a one way of thinking about something, and the way a story is told makes you kind of question that, and you look at it from the view of another person, not just, like I said, in point of view, but also in I never really thought about it in this way before, but now that I've heard it from that side, I can see where they're coming from. It doesn't mean they're going to change how they think. It just means that you can see it from a different side. And we look at a simple or a single theme in simple text, whereas complex or multiple themes in complex text. Hopefully I said simple text before. I feel like I've gotten distracted. Anyway, so like we said with William Shakespeare, he has romances that are tragedies. So it's a love story that's tragic. Whereas you can read something and it's just a very simple love story, right? And then simple text, you just build on common knowledge. A story about a trip to the grocery store, for example. Whereas with the complex text, you're going to have cultural or content-specific knowledge that needs to be given and built upon. So, for example, Slumdog Millionaire, you had to have the explanation of the caste system to be able to build upon that and get them a little further into the story so that they know what exactly they're reading about. Because without something to start building on, they're not going to really understand it. So you have to kind of lay that groundwork, and then you add to that knowledge, and they're able to connect what they've learned to what they already know. Right now, hopefully quickly, I'm going to go through a couple of strategies that you can use to help them develop their reading skills. I have tons of support documents and such for these. They will be uploaded to ManageBack and Google Drive as soon as possible. One strategy is the anticipation reaction guide. The teacher, you will identify key concepts or themes by reading ahead. You will write down 3 to 5 anticipatory statements about these key concepts or themes, and then you're going to avoid using true or false or yes or no statements because you really want them to be able to go deep and to answer. So this is an example of what your grid will look like for the anticipation reaction guide. So you see there you have your statement, then you have an agree or disagree, which is where they're going to click off. Then you have the reader's perspective before reading, textual evidence with the source and page number, and the reader's perspective after reading. All right, so students, before reading, they will identify personal perspectives about the statements. Then during reading, they will read and document their textual evidence and then consider multiple perspectives. And then after reading, they will consider whether they need to modify their perspective or if their perspective was actually supported. Alright, so this builds the reading comprehension skills because it allows them to identify simple facts presented in the written text, which is a literal comprehension. It allows them to make judgments about the written text content, which is evaluative comprehension, and then it connects the text to other written passages and situations, which is inferential comprehension. Alright, so we come back in here and we're going to look at what we've got here. Alright, so first of all, we have the statement that you have come up with. And we look here at number 1. It is regrettable that animals lose their homes when we cut down trees to mine natural resources. However, it is more important that we obtain these natural resources to make the things we want and need to live. This is kind of a bad example because there's 2 contradictory statements here. So in order for them to be able to agree or disagree is going to be kind of complicated. But you can see once this student agreed here that they gave the reason why, so you know that they're agreeing to the first part of the statement, not the second part. There were news reports on the great gray owl being endangered by the fire in the Sierra Nevada forest. If we log the trees, it could become extinct. And then we see here that they give their source of information supporting their thing. So trees and plants, la-di-la-di-la, with the author and page number down here. And then we see here that it is not just logging that destroys the animals' homes, but also clear cutting for building or for mining. So they were able to say, like, yes, this was supported here by this text, but I have also gained additional knowledge here. And that is supposed to be evident. And we all know with like a lower phase that it would not be this complex, but your statements should also reflect the level of student you are teaching at the time. The other strategy is the collaborative strategic reading, or CSR. There are 4 reading strategies applied: before, during, and after reading. 1 before, 1 after, and 2 during. So you looks at prior knowledge, vocabulary development, questioning techniques, and the opportunity to practice new skills. This is what the basic breakdown of these skills or these activities for this process actually look like. We're going to take a look at these very quickly one-on-one, but I want you to just please bear in mind that if you are interested in using any of the 3 strategies I present today, I have all the resources and I can answer questions individually. I'm just trying to save us all some time. So first we're going to look at the preview strategy, okay? So basically this is brainstorming and making predictions. It takes about 12 minutes. Students will write down everything they know about the topic in the preview section of their learning log, which I will show you later, under what I already know about the topic. Then they will, in pairs, share their responses with each other, and then they will skim the passage using textual features such as the headings, pictures, graphs, or anything that exists to predict what they might learn as they read, and they will write down these predictions in the preview section of their learning logs under what I think I will learn, and then they will share the best ideas with the class. For during, we're going to look at the click or clunk part of the during the reading. This time will vary because it depends how long you set up for them to read and how you work it out. But student who encounters a clunk must apply one or more fix-ups. So a clunk is like a pothole in the road. It's a word they don't know or a portion of the reading they can't understand. A click is, I get this, I can move on, I keep reading it, it clicks into place. A clunk is a slowdown, okay? So they can either reread the sentence as though the clunk were a blank space and then try to guess a synonym or a different word that could be placed in there to correct the clunk and see if that helps them to break it down and understand it. They can reread the sentence with the clunk and then, of course, look at it in context, meaning they're going to read the sentences before it and the sentences after it, see if that helps them to determine what the meaning of the clunk is. They could also look at a prefix or suffix of the clunk in case it's a word that has that and can help them better understand it. Or if it's two words put together, they can break down the word to understand, kind of like headache. So head obviously is my head. Ache is a pain. Oh, it's a pain in my head, right? That was a very simple example. So teachers should decide how much text you should read, if they're going to read a paragraph, if they're going to read a page, if they're going to how much they're going to read. So while reading shorter passages like a paragraph can actually have increased comprehension, it'll take more time. But I do recommend that for the lower phases, whereas reading longer passages may shorten comprehension a little bit because they want to get through it, but it will shorten the time of the activity. Since we're kind of focusing on comprehension and skills, I recommend shorter chunks to ensure that they're actually comprehending what is being taught. Or written, actually what is being written. Should have been that. Anyway, so let's look at the second one, which is getting the gist, okay? So, once again, the time is going to vary, but they're going to identify the main idea, restate the main idea in 10 words or less, all right? So, you're going to identify, these are the steps. The students must identify whether the paragraph is about a person, place, or thing, which person, place, or thing, what is being said about the person, place, or thing, restate the essence of the paragraph in a sentence containing 10 words or fewer, and you tell them the time limit, you tell them the size of the text they're going to read. Now, after reading, we have the wrap-up, okay? So this is where they're going to generate and answer questions from the text. This is going to be really, really helpful if you want to check comprehension a week or two later, if you save these questions, okay? So students are going to brainstorm a number of possible questions and write them in their learning logs in the wrap-up section under questions about the important ideas of the passage, all right? And the student will then arrange the questions according to a question hierarchy, okay? So higher order thinking or lower order thinking. So it's the first one would be the answer is in the text and can be stated in one or two words. The answer is in the text but requires more than a couple words. The answer is in the text but not all in the same place, so you have to look around and put it all together to make the answer. Or the reader has to actually synthesize his or her previous knowledge and then combine that with the text to create the answer to the questions, okay? And then they should next try to answer these questions. And if it cannot be answered, that means that it either needs to be looked at because it wasn't a good question, or it just needs a little more clarification to make it able to be answered. So students will write down the most important ideas from the day's reading in their learning logs under what I learned. And that could be their exit ticket. And that helps them to show that they actually are comprehending what they've been reading. So here is where we see the CSR in action. So we have the before, during, and after parts. We have the preview, the clunks and gists, and the wrap-up. So here we have, I'm going to have to get a little closer to the camera because it's hard to see, what I already know about the topic. An ecosystem is in the environment. What I think I will learn, an ecosystem is the environment. What I think I will learn something about deserts and rainforests. Okay? And then we see here the chunks and gists, clunks and gists, is the first section, a clunk, harmony, is in peace with each other. The gist, the parts of an ecosystem rely on each other. a clunk. Interdependence is relying on each other. The gist, an ecosystem can be broken. Okay? All right, and then you have questions about the most important ideas in the passage. What is an ecosystem? And what happens if a part of an ecosystem is damaged? And then what I learned, the ecosystem needs to be taken care of. It's really quite simple. The steps seem complicated, but the end result is quite simple. All right. So here's another strategy, and the last one I'm going to talk about, which is called PALS, Peer Assisted Learning Strategies. You're going to be pairing a higher performing reader with a lower performing reader. Highly structured activities, scripted prompts, frequent verbal interaction, and competitive game format. All right. First, there's 3 activities, as you see here. The length, 10, 12, 10, and 10. But these are all fluid. Do what you got to do. All right. So step 1, we're going to look at, which is partner reading with retell. We're going to look at this one first. All right. So the higher performing student reads for the first 5 minutes. Okay. Basically, this is like creating a tutor atmosphere. Okay. So what happens is the higher performing reader is going to read first. Okay. So I'm going to use this book as an example. She had told herself she was going in search of food, but in her heart she knew there was a deeper reason for leaving the forest. She missed the sound of a human voice. Okay? So the higher phase student has just read that. The higher performing student has just read that. So what would happen is where the first reader has left off, the lower performing student reads for 5 minutes. Or for a lower phase, where they read the same thing, because the higher performer has helped them on words they may have stumbled with if they had to read on their own. So now they can read it. She had told herself she was going in search of food, but in her heart she knew there was a deeper reason for leaving the forest. She missed the sound of a human voice. They can read it because they're not going to stumble over the words. But if they do stumble, they know that their peer reader can help them pronounce the words. And so that would be the role of the higher phase, to be able to help them pronounce the words. Okay? And there may be a word that the higher functioning, I keep doing that, the higher level reader stumbles over that the lower level knows and can actually help them read. And that'll boost their confidence quite significantly. All right? They need to remember to be reading with expression. They need to not just read it. She had told herself. Okay? So it's very important that we teach them how to read with expression. All right? So that is the one way for lower phases. Higher phases, after that paragraph, the lower functioning, lower performing, I don't know why I keep doing that. Lower performing reader would read, no, that wasn't the whole truth either. She missed the dreams, the good ones, the bad ones. She found herself longing for them, needing them, addicted, but not this, not this. Okay? So I have no idea. I haven't read this part of the book yet. I don't know what they're talking about. But so that basically one person would read a chunk. You would tell okay, so the first reader, you're going to read page 97. And you're going to stop at the end of page 97. Second reader, you will read all of page 98. And you're going to stop at the end. And they're reading aloud to each other. Okay? Or like I said, first reader, you're going to read page 97. Second reader, you're going to read page 97. Let's see if you can practice intonation. Let's see if you can practice words that you struggle with before. However you want to look at it. All right? All right, and then they have to take turns retelling the main idea. She basically wants to leave the forest because she misses people and she misses having dreams. But I feel like there's more to it than that. Okay, so they kind of share with that back and forth. All right? All right, so now we look at paragraph shrinking. All right? So here, the higher performing reader reads for 5 minutes, starting where the second reader left off in partner reading. Okay, so we got to the end of page 98. So now we're on page 99. All right? And then at the end of each paragraph, the higher performing reader identifies the main character, who or what, and summarizes the main idea in 10 words or less. I'm not going to read a page to you, but we're on page 99. Which meant there was a pretty good mystery as to why he couldn't see any light at all. If you notice, we were talking about a woman before, so now we're talking about a man. He shivered. He was so cold. He was so hungry. He was so thirsty. He was so scared. And suddenly he realized he was not alone. The rustling sound was different from the water sloshing sound. Very different. It was a distinctly dry sound, like someone rubbing crinkly leaves together. Hello? He called. No answer, he whispered. I know, I heard. I mean, I didn't hear, he said. Is someone there? He's obviously talking to himself. And we would have read the other page. Oh, yes, it's Duck. Okay, so the character is Duck, and he's hearing a noise, and he's exploring a tunnel, because now I remember what happened previously. I haven't gotten here, but I know where he is now. He's exploring a tunnel because he found himself in this tunnel, and he thinks he can hear somebody, and that he may not be alone in the tunnel. Okay. They should be using 10 words or less, but I'm just trying to show you, and I'm rambling and moving on, because this is already long. Okay, so then, after switching roles, the lower performing student picks up where the other one left off and reads for 5 minutes, once again, with the lower phases. You can just have them reread it, and then in their own words, do the same thing. But their summary should sound a little different than the other kid's summary, okay? At the end of each paragraph, the lower performing reader identifies the main character and summarizes the idea, the same thing. The coach monitors, that's you, the teacher, monitors this and offers corrective feedbacks, okay? Not naming the main character, naming too many main characters. I'm sorry, the coach is not you. I'm wrong there. Because you can't be at every table, right? The coach is the one listening, okay? So regardless, whichever role you're in, if you're not reading it, you're the coach. Right. So the coach monitors and offers corrective feedback about naming the main character, not naming the main character, or naming too many characters, summarizing using more than 10 words, or not generating a main idea. So therefore, I would have been corrected because my summary was more than 10 words. And I don't think I talked about the main idea. Alright, so now we're going to look at the last one, which is the predictive relay. Okay, this is about making predictions. So, beginning with the stronger reader, each student completes the 4 steps and repeats the process until 5 minutes have elapsed, at which point each student switch roles. The students switch the roles. So the students begin reading in the text at a point which they left off in paragraph shrinking. So step 1, they predict. What do you think is going to happen next? Alright, for the next half page they're going to read or whatever. Then they read. The reader reads the half page. Then they check. Were you correct in your prediction? And then the reader identifies and summarizes the main idea of the half page or whatever amount you had them read in 10 words or less. This is basically, so you would do all 3 of these. You're not just going to pick one activity. But you have to teach this. So that means that 1 week, you're going to focus on partner reading with retell. And that's going to be the only activity you do for that class. Then the next week, you're going to teach paragraph shrinking. Okay? And that's all you're going to do for that class. Then the next class, you're going to kind of try to incorporate partner reading with retell and paragraph shrinking together. And then the next class, you'll teach prediction relay, and then you'll try to practice together. Once they're pretty smooth with this, you can run with this. So we're looking at, it would take the rest of this term probably to get them to the smoothness of this, if you choose this route. And then from the next one, so starting next term, you could probably just launch with this and give them a reminder and launch, okay? All right, everybody, so that basically wraps up this training. I know it was very, very fast. I don't know how many of you are actually going to watch it. I was just kind of thinking if we could get this really quick training out of the way, and you're in a time that works for you, and then when we all come together, it's a very quick meeting, that would be the most viable way to handle this. The point that I want everybody to take away from this is you need to find a strategy that works for you, that is actually teaching your students reading skills. When the midterm comes up in a couple of weeks, they're going to learn the readings. They're going to be tested on reading skills. They're going to be given a text to read and answer questions on. If they don't know how to do that, they're going to fail the test. And that shows that we are failing them, because the goal of reading class is not memorization. The goal of school is not memorization, but we're just focusing on reading right now. The goal of a school is life skills, and one of the life skills we really need to teach these kids is reading skills. They need to be able to read, and our midterm tests are going to start to see if that is actually happening. I recommend that you utilize Common Lit, because that is a way to really prepare them for reading a text they've never seen before and answering relevant questions for that text. If you have questions about how to use Common Lit, please contact me, and I will definitely show you the way to use that most efficiently. You can print it out as a PDF, and you can also have them do it online. It works either way. So it's not that you have to use a computer, because I know sometimes that can be tricky. You can also look up short comprehension text quizzes, and you're going to find a plethora that you can use to give in the class every couple of weeks, just to make sure that they're really, really learning reading skills. Once again, please reach out to me. I'm obviously working for my vacation, so if any of you have any questions, you can reach out on WeChat, and I will definitely answer it. And I sincerely hope that this was informative, and I am sorry that I was talking so quickly, and I am also sorry about some of the errors, but I didn't want to re-record this 1,200 times. So, yeah. So if you have any questions, just WeChat me, and we will have a meeting a couple of days after we get back, so that we can make sure that we're all on the same page with what the goal and purpose of reading class is. Thanks.